Lords of War, Elves vs. Lizardmen, Volume 1. Written by Martin Vaux and read by Tom Barratt. Part 6. The Blind Guardian. Brother Chokwek shuffled through the labyrinthine corridors of the Temple of Slotgrass, trying his best to stay quiet. In either hand he brandished the snaking dragon-steel daggers of a cruel sacrifice. The weapons were sharp enough to cut the very air before him, but deep within his cold skin, wrapped in the black cloak of the Gesh, his heart beat slow with fear. Chokwek's journey had begun several days earlier, at the edge of the Squamos territories. He had travelled freely, as all Gesh do, navigating the treacherous swamps, bogs, and marshes patrolled by Amphis scouts. His mission was secret, and so hour after hour had passed without him uttering a single syllable, sticking to cover and moving as close to unseen as he could manage. To reach the Temple of Slotgrass, which was all but submerged in the seas to the south of Nuville, he had to cross one of many stretches of ocean defended by Clan Placios. These creatures, ancient and mighty, cared little for the politics of mainlanders, and usually wrecked any vessel that attempted to pass into the temple's seas. Clearly word had somehow reached them that he was coming, and his journey, which had continued by canoe, had been uneventful. On arriving at Slotgrass, the drowned temple had seemed deserted, which Chokwek understood to be by design. Having never left the mainland prior to this pilgrimage, he had only the stories told by the other Gesh summoners to go by. They had told him that any soul who set foot within Temple Slotgrass was watched from their arrival to their departure, and that as soon as he landed there would be legions of skink dart spitters pointing their blowpipes in his direction. This might have been the case, but as he descended the slippery steps into the temple mouth, he had seen and heard nothing to suggest that there was anything alive in all the temple grounds but him. Travelling to the heart of the temple required pilgrims to navigate several sludded corridors and so-called drowning pools. These huge spaces had been built as traps to snare and dispatch trespassers when the temple had been constructed millennia ago, before the Age of Dragons. Originally, thousands of lizardmen had worked on the three temples, Zotl, Tslak, and Slukras, using their inestimable skills in engineering to pack them full of dead ends, tricks, and deadly ruses. But to Brother Chokwek, the story of the construction of the Temple of Slukras was the most captivating. So went the legend. The temple had originally been built on the back of King Aristones, the timeless ruler of Clan Placios, the gargantuan monarch who had, even at the time, acted as steward of the tides for eons, remained near the surface for decades as leagues of lizardmen toiled on his back, carving and chiseling and hewing stone. Then, when the huge construction was complete, King Aristones had swum out to the reefs to the south of Nuville and dived. Hundreds of lizardmen stonemasons had volunteered to drown themselves, sacrificing themselves to sever the temple's foundations from Aristones' back. Once their work was complete, the temple had then sunk, in situ, with only the uppermost layer standing proud of the water. Elsewhere, within the titanic structure, vast chambers had been designed to capture and hold pockets of air, making it possible for pilgrims who knew their way to journey deeper and deeper, right to the altar of Slukras, the holiest site on all of the earth dedicated to Slukra, god of the seas. Brother Chokwek had navigated his way down through several layers of the temple, making his way through flooded throne rooms and maze-like walkways, only taking wrong turns on a few occasions. During the many long years in which the temple had been unmanned, while the lizardmen were enslaved to the elves and their dragon overlords, time had been a cruel companion to the structure. From every conceivable wall, ledge, carving, and handhold, lichen, moss, seaweed, and multicolored anemones had sprouted, shifting and wavering in the ocean's lilting tides. Still, the faded grandeur of the Temple of Slotgrass was more than intimidating. There was something about the internal workings of the building which made it feel like there were eyes always on you. Perhaps they were. Gathering a deep breath into his lungs, the young summoner prepared to dive. He was entering into a long drowning pool which led to the halls of the Apostles, the region of the temple dedicated to those 100 Lizardman engineers who had given their lives to sink the temple and shear it from Aristanes' back. As he plunged down into the water, whipping his tail to propel him into the depths, he wished he could cast off the heavy dark Gesh cloak. It restricted his movement, catching against his claws as he swam, but he knew he needed to wear it for just a little while longer. As Chokwek dove deeper and deeper, he felt his lungs beginning to burn. Why the Gesh had chosen him and not one of the many summoners from Clan Amphis escaped him. An aqualung or gills would be of a significant advantage here. He saw the entryway which led to the Hall of the Apostles and swam underneath it, moving to now swim up towards the dappled silver surface of the pool above. His head broke through the surface, the Gesh hood falling to his shoulders, and his first action was to raise the ornate dragon steel blades above the surface of the water. "I come in peace," he spat, clearing the water from his mouth. "Please, I come in peace." From the darkness of the Hall of Apostles, a deep, rasping voice sounded out. "Few come here in peace, podling," it said. As the voice echoed around the chasm-like space, Brother Chokwek listened intently. He could hear from some way down the Hall of Apostles that the speaker was eating. The wet sounds of snapping fish bones rattled ominously through the dimly lit space, and as Chokwek looked around at the walls he saw towering statues, each identical. Long stone tails coiled around strong squat legs, muscular midriffs and sturdy arms holding tools, long snouts over rows of sharp teeth with carved stone eyes staring blankly into the dark. The rows of statues which lined each wall stretched far beyond where Brother Chokwek could hope to see. But unlike everything else in the Temple of Slukras, the statues of the Apostles were immaculately clean. "Have you come here to slay me?" asked the deep, rasping voice, "as the others who came before you?" "No, brother," said Chokwek. "Then why are you carrying blades?" Brother Chokwek, still treading water, placed the blades on the edge of the pool. "I have placed down my weapons, brother. You have nothing to fear from me." "Fool," said the stranger in the darkness. Suddenly, from the shadows right beside Chokwek, 2 clawed fists leapt forth and grasped the young summoner by the throat. "Please," said Chokwek, struggling to speak, "I bring a message from the Gesh." As the life was slowly being choked from him, Chokwek heard one final phrase. "We'll see." When he came to, Chokwek quickly realized that he had been tightly bound with kelp. He had been tied to one of the statues of the Apostles. His head throbbed and he was desperately thirsty. Before him, sat in front of a mound of bones, was a large, brightly coloured lizard man with bright pink fronds poking forth about his neck and head. The lizard man was clearly sightless, but the creature had lit a small fire, presumably to keep warm. Held delicately in the lizard man's hands were the sacrificial blades Chokwek had been ordered to carry. He felt over them with his rough fingers before tossing them to one side, where they clattered and skidded into a pile of similar blades, dozens of them, lying half in shadow. "And what is your message, podling?" said the lizard man. "You are to journey to the Temple of Zotl." "Why, I do not know." "Who told you this?" "The Gesh speak as one," Chokwek replied. "We do," replied the hulking lizard man. Chokwek watched as the blind guardian rose and began to pad around the Hall of the Apostles. "You know," said Chokwek, "that your name is Legend." The lizard man snorted indignantly. "Legend?" he replied. "And what is my legend?" "That your name is Quethel Sorlax, that you have guarded the Temple of Slukra for over 1,000 years, that the Gesh have sent hundreds of apostles to replace you, but that all have failed." The sightless lizard man grunted. "My orders are to defend the temple from all those who venture here," the blind guardian replied. "Those who make the pilgrimage to Slukras do so to drown at the altar of the old god. I am to aid all in this ambition and to never surrender my duties. I am only to be replaced when I am felled by an opponent mightier than I. These are the orders I have upheld for longer than I can remember. Why should I choose to believe a podling such as you? Because I have been told that you are needed, not by any lizardman, but by Dothrak Silverscale himself. Quethel Sorlax spun on his heels and drew from his waist 2 enormous cleavers, both of which he pressed to Chokwek's throat. "You dare not speak of Dothrak Silverscale," hissed the blind guardian, "for Dothrak was as close as any to a living god." Brother Chokwek flinched, closing his eyes and preparing to die. "He will come again," said the young summoner. "Pah!" spat Quethel. "Spawning stories. I fought with Dothrak Silverscale to free our people. I was with him when he battled the King's Mount. I saw the silver dragon die in a wave of flame which took my sight and left me maimed. The last thing I will ever see was the death of Dothrak Silverscale. There is no way for him to return." "There is a way," pleaded Chokwek. "There is a way. Plans are afoot. The Gesh are moving. You are needed, Quethel Sorlax." The blind guardian lowered his blades, placing them back in their sheaths, and he sniffed at Chokwek. "If Dothrak Silverscale needs me, I shall follow him unto death," he said. Using his teeth, Quethel Sorlax ripped apart the bindings keeping Chokwek tied to the huge statue. Quethel then grasped at the black Gesh cloak Chokwek had wrapped around him and pulled it off and away. "I have not worn the cloak of the Gesh for a millennia," he said, "and I thought I never would again." Chokwek stood, freed from the dark mantle, and knelt before the blind guardian. "Head to Zottel," said Chokwek, "and seek out the guardian there, Kayitza, the Red Death. He will explain to you how Dothrak will be reborn." Quethel licked his fangs and began waddling towards the drowning pool Chokwek had used to make his entrance. "You will need to find things to occupy your mind," he said. "I kept the apostles clean." The blind guardian pointed up towards the long rows of stone effigies. "If I am ever to return, ensure that I will not find them less than spotless." With that, Quethel Sorlax leapt into the drowning pool, leaving Chokwek very much alone.